They're stinking cheaters in Houston.
Verlander set to undergo Tommy John surgery.
Trey Mancini was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer.
It's time they finish the job. The Houston Astros, world champions.
You feel like you're stuck in quicksand. What a moment for Houston and what a moment for the city.
This is the greatest bunch of guys. Now, what's next? Party. Yeah.
Don't call it a comeback.
This is not the comeback that some fans were rooting for, but hey, the Houston Astros are all the way back in their World Series champs.
Did you say some fans? Some fans, 5-0? I'd say everyone not in the 713 area code, and that's because they deserve it. Less than 3 years ago, the Astros were the pariahs of baseball after they got caught in a cheating scandal that turned the whole sport against them. But I do admit, they've been clawing their way back scandal-free, and you know what? They've got a few comeback stories I suppose we can all be happy about.
Come on, Shaq. You got to do it better. They got Verlander, Mancini, Dusty Baker. There's a lot to be happy about when it comes to the Astros.
We got to get you one of those Lone Star State hats or something. Maybe you need a 10-gallon hat. You're getting the key to San Antonio from Greg Popovich. Now you're in Austin, Texas. No wonder you're an Astros fan.
My wife wants me to move to Texas, but I live in Pittsburgh. I'm staying in Pittsburgh. I ain't going nowhere. But, hey, we have some other stories this week. Would you rather have Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes to lead you to a fourth quarter comeback? And we have some of the biggest names in hip-hop who are part of a comeback story this week as well. From Wondery, I'm Ryan Shazier.
And I'm Dave Damashek.
And this is Don't Call It a Comeback.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.
Shaq, let's get into this Astros comeback.
Fine, 5-0. Okay, so back in 2017, the Astros were the feel-good World Series champs in the fun uniforms with a 5'5" guy standing tall as the face of the team in Jose Altuve.
The Houston Astros are world champions for the first time in franchise history.
Then the Stros and their core players got even better, making it back to the World Series in 2019. But after losing Game 7 in their own stadium, their dynasty in the making all came crumbling down with the reports of an enormous cheating scandal.
The Major League Baseball cheating scandal sending shockwaves around the world. The owner of the Houston Astros fired the team's general manager and manager after an investigation found that the Astros cheated by stealing signs during their World Series championship season.
The Astros were fined millions, stripped of multiple draft picks, and forced to try to rebuild their roster and reputation, while critics called for them to be stripped of their 2017 title.
That championship trophy that's in Houston is bogus. They're not champions. You're cheaters.
For years, star players around the league criticized them. Media crushed them, and fans from New York to L.A. booed them wherever they went. But this year, led by veteran manager Dusty Baker, the Astros made it all the way back to the World Series, and something felt a little different. Their ace, Justin Verlander, was voted 2022 Comeback Player of the Year after coming back from Tommy John surgery and in search of his first World Series win after years of struggles.
It's a legacy game for Justin Verlander. He has the worst ERA in World Series history. 0-6 with a 6.07. That's the only thing missing on this guy's Hall of Fame resume.
Their lineup also featured a new face down the stretch, Trey Mancini, who missed the entire 2020 season, recovering from stage 3 colon cancer. Mancini came up huge in Game 5.
Fair ball and picked by Mancini. And Trey Mancini keeps the Astros in front.
So when the Astros were closing out the Phils in Game 6 to win the World Series, the script had flipped on baseball's villains.
Alvarez hits a high drive center field. Veer leans back. This game is turned upside down.
For more on the Astros comeback run, time to welcome Fox Sports MLB analyst and host of Flipping Bats podcast, Ben Verlander. Thank you so much for coming, Ben.
Of course, fellas. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, hey, Ben, not everybody wanted to see the Astros come back this year, especially Damashek. And so why are these guys okay to root for if you're not from Houston?
Yeah, I think it's a likable bunch of guys now, and I understand that a lot of the world doesn't love them after what happened in 2017. But you look at this team now, and one, Dusty Baker is just one of one of the greatest managers to do it. And the one thing he didn't have was a ring. He didn't have his World Series ring as a manager. And he's just one of the most likable guys. A lot of the guys on the team are so likable. You mentioned Trey Mancini, and he's on the team now. And it's just a bunch of guys that for the better part of a decade have been the most dominant team in baseball. I mean, they're building a dynasty there in Houston. And say what you want about the first title, but there's nothing you can say about this one. And 6 years in a row making it to the AL Championship Series. 6 in a row. It's a record in the American League. This team is special, and it's not just the same core. It's just a program that's built, and they cycle and cycle and cycle guys. You lose Carlos Correa, and in steps a new young shortstop. I mean, this organization is very talented, and they have the blueprint for winning. That's for sure.
There are a lot of good stories going with this team, like you touch on there, but I can't ignore the serendipity. We were just talking about Justin Verlander. You have the same surname, so let's get in on that. I think that's a funny coincidence for all of us here. So I mentioned he missed the last 2 seasons, or most of, because of the Tommy John surgery. He's comeback player of the year. What went into, at this late stage of his career, this mighty bounce back from him, and how did it inform his performance once he got to the Fall Classic?
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting here, and you never want a pitcher to get Tommy John. It's never a good thing. But I almost think in hindsight, the timing of it for Justin was a blessing in disguise. He gets it at the end, or he gets hurt at the very beginning of that 2020 season, doesn't get surgery until the end of the year. So then last year, his rehab was done at the end of the season. So it was like, do we really push it to come back and just pitch in the playoffs? That's probably not the right call, so he didn't. But that gave him the whole offseason to treat it like a normal offseason. So he didn't have to treat it like he was still rehabbing to come back. He was able to treat it like, all right, I'm going to pretend I just got out of a season. I'm going to go about this offseason like normal. I'm going to go about spring training like normal. And all along, he was just checking off these boxes of, okay, now I need to pitch to a batter. Now I need to pitch an inning. And all along the year, there were just these boxes that he kept checking. And we'd be talking about it along the way. He'd say like, yeah, now I want to get through 5 innings. I want to get a win on the mound. I want to throw 95. I want to throw 97. I want to throw 100 pitches. I want to throw a complete game. And all year, he just kept checking off every box. And one that he probably didn't even have to check was potential American League Cy Young Award winner. And I'm very superstitious, but I'm hopeful that he gets to check that one here in a couple of weeks. But if I were to tell you that I saw these numbers coming, I'd be lying. But if I were to tell you that I knew he'd come back and be successful, even at 39 years old, that would be the truth, because I saw the work ethic behind the scenes. The behind the scenes work is so difficult, and nobody knows that more than Ryan. I mean, unbelievable what goes into trying to come back from injuries that you thought maybe you'd never see the field again, or maybe you'd never, who knows what the future holds. And for him to come back and to get back on the mound and to check off all those boxes along the way and end up putting together on paper perhaps the best year he's ever had, and he won an MVP award in 2011. So just remarkable, and I couldn't be more happy and more proud of him.
So Ben, with you, like, obviously this is your brother, and understanding his story and him being 39 years old, coming up, like going through all he's gone through, and just dealing with the injury, and then actually making it back to the World Series and finally pitching at his best. Like, what do you feel that was like for him? Because he's been in these situations before, but he's actually able to perform at his best this time around.
I feel like I didn't know the answer to that for sure until the other night. Not the night they won it all. It was the night he pitched in Game 5 in Philadelphia. And he got the win, and he had never gotten the win on a mound in the World Series before. He's obviously checked off pretty much every other box there is to check, but that was the one he didn't have. And he got the win on the mound, and I talked to him. I was one of the first to talk to him on the field after the game.
I love you, man. I'm so pumped for you. This is really special for me, man.
Love you too. Thank you.
And the emotion was just so powerful. And at the end of it, he was talking about his daughter watching him in the stands. He was talking about the journey back. And at the end of it, he We hugged, we teared up a bit, and the emotion was running wild. And I think in that moment, I realized what this all means to him. The ability to come back, the ability to do it in front of his now 4-year-old daughter, 4 years old as of, just a couple of days ago, and to have her in the stands for the first time during the World Series to watch him. It was very, very emotional for him, and an experience that he'll have for the rest of his life.
I talk about it all the time. Underdog stories are great, but when you're the guy who's supposed to do it and you have not done it over the course of the few chances you had previously, there's an extra weight on your shoulder. So I thought it was great stuff out of Justin on the hump in that big spot. His entire career must have flashed before his eyes on that one. You mentioned family. And I don't know if you heard, he's married to Kate Upton. She was in the stands, and not just there rooting along, but I felt like she became the personification for Astros fans of 2022. I thought it was great that everybody who got in the postgame podium shouted out the fans for sticking by the team. When we talk about most of baseball America was down on them. Did that reach the locker room? Did that reach the clubhouse? The way she was kind of pushing back, she was unapologetically pro Astros and talking stuff right back to Phillies fans and otherwise. Did that mean something to the other fans or even to the guys in the locker room?
I'm not sure how it didn't reach the guys in the locker room, because it certainly reached me. I was sitting right next to her, and I feel like I caught a few spare elbows every once in a while. I mean, she was on one for sure, and as she should be. She is. One, it was in Philadelphia, which I learned a lot about the Philadelphia fan base. One, I feel like they get an unfair bad rap. They were great fans. They're passionate. They will yell. They will flick you off every once in a while. But if you give it right back, it's almost like they respect you more. And Kate and I were talking about that, and I feel like she took that and really ran with it, because every time she would catch a word, she would flick them off right back, and it was never really any animosity between everybody. It all just seemed in good fun and good nature. But then you start seeing the videos on social media, and the team sure knew. We'd be out at night, and Justin would laugh about it. I mean, it's really nice, It's really cool and refreshing to know that, for Justin, his wife has his back more than anybody, and you don't want to get in her way in the stands, but. The Astros fans were great throughout, and it almost feels like Kate was the number one fan for him.
That's one thing that I love about sports is how hostile fans can get, and don't matter who you are as a fan, like when it comes out of you, like it comes out, So to see Kate to be able to do that for her husband, but also the team, when people are always chipping back, that's something that's great about sports.
Don't call it a comeback.
One thing that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about Trey Mancini a lot, because a lot of people don't really know his story. And it reminds me a lot of my past teammate, James Conner, who's also came back from cancer. Mancini had stage 3 colon cancer and missed the entire 2020 season. Like, what did that mean? Like, what did he mean to the team down the stretch in the clubhouse?
Yeah, I think in the clubhouse, he meant everything for a while, and then on the field in the last 2 games he made a big impact. And I talked to him right after the World Series was won, and I know Trey back from my days playing in the minor leagues. Him and I played against each other for a while, and then on an all-star team together, so we've known each other, and he's come on my show before right after everything happened with the cancer for him. And what an impact he's had on not just the Astros, not just the Orioles, but on baseball fans, man. I mean, this guy said when he first came back, he goes, coming back to play baseball was the last thing on my mind. I was just trying to stay alive. And, I mean, that's pretty powerful when you think about it. And then for him to get traded in the middle of the year to this team and be part of a playoff run, and for him to not have the impact on the field that he wanted to, he had an impact down the stretch, and he came in when he didn't think he would. He made a game-saving play down the line, and who knows, we could be talking about a totally different series if Trey Mancini doesn't come in to make that play off Kyle Schwarber's bat down the line. Gets a big hit in the last game after their first baseman gets hurt. He ends up the starting first baseman in the game, in the series clinching game. Just what a journey for him. He's one of the nicest guys in the world, and it was the toughest time of his life, no doubt, and he meant everything to this team. And one thing that stuck with me, and was talking to my brother about this after that Game 5 play he made down the line. Obviously, he had been struggling. He didn't have a hit in the postseason, but in the locker room after the game, they gave Trey Mancini the game ball. And I think that shows you everything you need to know. There were guys that had big hits. There were guys that had big defensive plays. But for Trey Mancini to get that game ball meant everything to him. And I know he was emotional speaking to the team. And it's just the ultimate comeback story for Trey. And it's an emotional one at that. And he meant everything to this Astros team.
It's opposite. It's sort of the inverse of taking Dave Stapleton out for Bill Buckner, putting Trey Mancini into that spot, and him making maybe the play that could have swung the whole series, as you touch on. And it's easy to root for. 6 months of chemo, and just 3 years ago. Now let's move on to another great story. You touched on Dusty Baker being as likable as he is. I don't know about the black surgical gloves. Why not just the batting gloves? Wouldn't that be a more aesthetically pleasing look? Either way, one of the great guys in baseball. Should we expect that Dusty is able to carry that over into 2023? Is he satiated by this? Are the Astros satiated by this? They are on a heater here, like you say, for 6 years going now. What do you expect with Dusty and the rest of the gang going forward?
Every time somebody in a position like Dusty, whether it be as a player or a manager, where they're clearly in the back end of their career, they're a little bit older, there's this one thing they haven't accomplished, and then they accomplish it, and you think, he's going to ride off into the sunset. I don't think that's going to happen with Dusty. I remember him saying earlier in the year, he doesn't want one championship, he wants two, which seemed at the time like, hey man, it's been a long time and you don't have one. Let's worry about getting the one first. And he goes on talking about two. And I think he realized the team he has and the ability that they have and how close they've gotten but haven't quite gotten there. And now they got there. And I do believe he's going to come back. And I believe the players love him. I believe they rally around him. And he's the only player and manager in history with 1,800 hits and 1,800 wins as a manager. When it comes to people that have done both as a player and a manager, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. He's already one of the greatest managers to ever do it. He just needed that championship. I think he was a Hall of Famer, no doubt anyway. But now he's got this done, and he's etching himself as one of the all-time greats, and he's writing quite the story, and I really don't think it's done yet.
So I know you're talking about Dusty Baker, and if he's coming back, to me, and they have this team that's good enough to possibly win another championship, do you feel this rookie, Jeremy Pena, like he's a fresh face, he's a rookie, Gold Glove winner, ALCS MVP, World Series MVP, do you feel that he can help this team like make another go round for a championship? Because with him being so young and having all these accomplishments already, he kind of remind me of like Kylian Mbappe or something when it comes to baseball, because this is like when you're trying to win, it's key pieces like that can help it.
Yeah, and he obviously stepped into a role that there was a key piece there. Carlos Correa was the heartbeat of the Astros and the energy and the passion, and he was a superstar. And then you have this rookie step in and had all the makings of a star early on in the season. It looked like it. And I think after the World Series and after the ALCS MVP and World Series MVP, I have no problem saying Jeremy Pena is a superstar in the game of baseball already. To step into the shoes that he did, which are not easy. Take it from a guy that has had big shoes to try and live up to his whole life. Stepping into some big shoes are not an easy thing to do. And he did it, and he did it really well. And I just can't imagine, you started this year with a team that was ready to win and a fan base that was frustrated that Carlos Correa might not be coming back. And they wanted to re-sign him, and they wanted to pay him a ton of money. And the organization and Jim Crane, the owner, said, you got to take calculated risks. And they felt confident in this young guy, Jeremy Pena, stepping in and filling shoes that I can't imagine the weight that was on his shoulders. And what he did this year, he won a Gold Glove award. He had a great regular season, an all-time postseason. He's a great story, and he's going to be a part of this Astros organization and holding down that shortstop spot for a long, long time to come. And they're going to be good because of him. A big reason why is because of him.
It's funny because you talk about filling the big shoes of Correa at shortstop. On the other side of second base is the second baseman in his little shoes, Jose Altuve. Is this a completion of a circle for him personally? Because I think, fair or not, he, as I say, is the face of the Houston Astros over this 6-year period here. Did you get a vibe off of him that this has been a baptism, that he's now born anew and all sins are forgiven and he is now clean going forward?
Yeah, I think I got that feeling from the majority of the guys that were there in 2017 for the entire organization, really. I mean, it was obviously tough, and they knew how good they were and they know how good they are. And this kind of just feels like all right, we can breathe. And you're absolutely right, fair or not, with Jose Altuve, because if you want to look into it, he was one of the 3 guys on the team that didn't actually want to cheat and didn't actually use the system they had in place. But he's Jose Altuve. He won the MVP award that year. He gets a lot of the spotlight. It's his team. So naturally, when they go on the road, who's getting booed the loudest? Jose Altuve. When everybody brings up the cheating from 2017, who's taking the brunt of that? Jose Altuve. Whether fair or not, it's there. So they win this championship. He hits 300 during the season. He's been perhaps the best second baseman in baseball for this decade. And to win this one for him, you could see it on his face. There was so much emotion. There was so much happiness. And that was kind of the theme around the team, is that we needed this one. You know, we've known how good we are for 6 years. And we needed this one for everybody else to understand it, I think.
You know, as much as anything to me, we talk about the nice stories in the clubhouse. To me, it's really a celebration of the fans. As I said earlier, I'm glad that they individually, everybody who was on the mic in the postgame shouted out those fans. They didn't do anything one way or the other. What were they supposed to do? Abandon their local baseball team and pick a new one? So I thought it was a neat completion of that circle as well. Of the comeback stories are the nature of this show, but those fans never went anywhere. And so good for them, and a tip of the hat to that fan base standing by their team when everybody was booing them and hating their favorite guys.
You know, it was also pretty poetic, I thought, that there was quite the storyline with this Astros team, right? Like the whole scandal and winning this year. And then you add on top of that they got to celebrate in front of those fans that you've been talking about. And no World Series team had won in front of their home crowd since the Red Sox 9 years ago. It's one of the oddest stretches of all time that for 9 straight years, the team that won it all won it on the road. So the Astros get to be that team that ends that streak, wins it in front of their home fans that stuck around them for so long. And the celebration that night in the streets, in the stands, it was memorable.
Man, this is great stuff, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us. And make sure to check out his show, Flipping Bats, over at Fox Sports. And thank you and congratulations again, Ben.
Of course. Thank you both for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
Don't call it a comeback.
Good stuff from Ben Verlander there. Muzzle tough to him, his family, all the Astros fans all over the place. But time now for other comeback stories in the news we need to check out. It's time for the check down. All right, Shazier, here we go. 2 GOATs led their teams to incredible comebacks. The Lord of the Rings, Tom Brady, saved the Bucs season with 50 seconds on the clock. And the baby GOAT, Patrick Mahomes, led the Chiefs to a gutsy OT win to take first place in the AFC away from the Titans. First seed, I should say. Shazier, you're at your own 20 with 1 minute to play and no timeouts. Do you want Brady or do you want Mahomes? I'm talking about the 2022 versions of both to lead your comeback attempt.
I'm taking the baby GOAT. And the reason I'm taking the baby GOAT, and I can't even call him the baby GOAT right now because I know a lot of people, they say right now if he retires, that he'll already be in the Hall of Fame, which I don't agree with yet. You know, he still has a body of work to develop. But
he'd go to the Hall, Shazier.
Right now.
He would. If he retired right now, he'd wind up in the Hall of Fame. But anyway, continue.
That would be the shortest career to ever make it to the Hall of Fame. But the reason I would go with the baby GOAT is that he wins 69% of the games that he's losing by 10 points. So that's just a crazy number to me. Like, when they were losing this game, I was like, Tennessee could pull it off. For some odd reason, my wife doesn't like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think, when people win too much, you start to I'm not really feeling them. And to me, he's just good, man. I went from like, oh man, I'm tired of watching the Chiefs like beat up on people and constantly coming back to just saying like, man, this man Patrick Mahomes is good. It's like it's almost like I bow down. I'm like, man, he's a really good player. Like, and so Tom Brady, he's the GOAT. He has a bunch of championships. If it's a Super Bowl, I might take Tom. But right now in 2022, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the league.
Half decade ago, I'm going with number 12. Right now, to your point, I'm going with 15. That's because all the other accolades you could give him, he's doing more with less. He's getting $50 million a year. That means less talent around him on the field. And he, like I say, is still carrying the day and has one of the very best teams going in the AFC this year.
Less talent on the field.
Yeah, versus having Tyreek Hill out there, yes. When you consume that chunk of the salary cap, that by definition means you have less players that are making a lot of bank, and the guys who make a lot of bank, Shazier, are the best players typically. So, yes, I'll stand by that point.
They lost Tyreek, but they gained Juju. They gained Sky Moore. They gained Valdez-Scantling. They gained Tooney. They still have Travis Kelce, They lost the leading receiver, but they still have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I didn't say that they had turned into Georgia Tech or anything. I mean, they're still a talented football team. Anywho, Packers fan, now we're talking about these high-end quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers not having a great year. Packers fan Lil Wayne took to Twitter to complain about Green Bay after they lost their 5th game in a row to the Lions, to the Detroit Lions, the worst defense in the league. Weezy tweeted, RIP to the season. We should have gotten rid of 12 before the season. 5-0. This is bad news for Aaron Rodgers. How do you come back from being slammed by Lil Wayne?
You just got to play. You have to play. And this is the problem. And I remember when Marcellus said this, people say, oh, I have a chip on my shoulder. And this is something that a lot of athletes say too. I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. Aaron Rodgers said that at the beginning of the year. And to me, Aaron Rodgers, he has a whole new team. He has a whole new environment. His coach is used to having a team that the defense is always on point, and Aaron Rodgers figure things out. He's always had Devontae Adams. Not always had Devontae Adams, but had Devontae Adams for a long time. And now you're getting used to new guys that, don't hold themselves to the same standard as Devontae Adams did. So when you have somebody that you can consistently throw the ball to, like a Devontae Adams, it makes your job easier. Like when Ben had Antonio Brown. When Ben had Antonio Brown, it's like their chemistry is on another level. So even when Ben was in trouble, he just knows that Antonio Brown is there to save the day.
I wonder if I could come up with another example of that. Like, I have one, Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, or Travis Kelce.
Okay.
He has Travis Kelce, so he doesn't have those weapons anymore. And, Lazard was good, but he's still a B. He's a number 2. He has a lot of number 2 guys, and he's looking for a number 1. And with all that being said, he's not feeling comfortable because he's a very good quarterback at improvising, and his receivers aren't improvising with him. So for him to come back, he has to get a better relationship with his receivers so that they can start improvising together and start making plays when there's nothing there. And that's what Patrick Mahomes is great at that, Aaron Rodgers is great at that, and that's why I feel he's struggling.
Our mutual pal, Ike Taylor, put it best to me the other day when he said, less ayahuasca, more I'm not playing well. If he wants to win over the other guys in the locker room, he is in the QB league making $50 million. Whether you think it's fair or not, he gets the weight of the blame for that one. All right, let's go to the college ranks now. The first edition of the CFB playoff seedings came out last week, but 2 teams in the top 4 lost. I'm sure you already heard about that. The Vols and the Clemson Tigers, 5-0. Which of these teams has a better chance of coming back from the loss and getting into that Final Four?
So I'm going to get straight to the point. I knew Clemson was going to lose some point in this year. they were playing with fire way too much to be a top 5 team, top 4 team. So I would have to go with Tennessee. And the reason I would have to go with Tennessee is because, you know, they have a good win over Alabama. They have a good win, a bunch of ranked teams. One thing that's going to be really difficult for them, but what helps them is that they're not going to play in the SEC championship. But, you know, they did lose to Georgia. But now what hurt them is that Alabama has a loss as well. Because if Alabama, you know, played Georgia, then it would have helped Tennessee. But since Alabama's not going to be in the SEC championship anymore, now it's a whole different dynamic. The team that I'm really looking forward to and I think can possibly make it and be the first 2-loss team to make it to the college playoff is LSU. And what you know they have to beat Georgia, but there hasn't been a 2-loss team in the college football playoff yet. There's been 1-loss teams, but not a 2-loss team yet.
Well, you're right about all of that, except for the fact that Tennessee smoked LSU, so that makes it very difficult to take LSU over Tennessee, but it's a mess. You don't even win your division within the conference. How can you be in the Final Four nationally? I think Oregon's got a good shot. I think Ohio State and Michigan both have great shots of making it if the only loss between the two of them is in their head-to-head.
No, I agree. I'm just saying, if there was a team with 2 losses that have a shot, I think it's LSU. That's what I'm saying. I don't think LSU is going to make it. I'm saying they have the best shot for a 2-loss team because today LSU has to go in front of Alabama. They're probably going to jump. They were number 9, so they're probably going to jump in front of Tennessee, or they might slide in front of Tennessee. You know, they're going to jump in front of Clemson.
Going to be interesting to see if Oregon can come all the way back from getting blown out in the first game of the season and still getting into that Final Four. I think they have a real shot at doing that. Meantime, moving on to a little bit of lighter stuff here. Drake and 21 Savage dropped a new album this week. It's titled Her Loss, 5-0. The streets are saying Drake hasn't made a good album since 2016. Is Her Loss a comeback for the Certified Lover Boy?
I'm not gonna lie, I like the Certified Lover Boy. Me personally, it's a few songs on it I like a lot. But Her Loss is a good album. I was actually listening to it this morning in the gym, and I listened to it on my ride back from Houston to Austin, and that's about a 2-hour drive. And I listened to it on the way there. It's an hour-long album. And I think it's a pretty good album. And 21 Savage hasn't dropped music in a while either. So just to see both of them collab, they both are very good lyrically. I thought it was a good album. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm kind of a Drake fan of Drake. I really like to listen to him. He's probably my favorite artist. So when he drops music, sometimes I'm a little bit more biased to his music than other people. Some people are more critics. I'm just a fan of what he puts out. I'm a supporter of him. So.
Well, I mean, there's no reason for me to say my thoughts because you just said basically what I was going to say about it. Spot on, 5-0. Lastly, Logan Paul gave undisputed WWE champ Roman Reigns all he could handle this weekend, but ultimately lost the match. And to make matters worse, Paul tore his meniscus, his MCL, and potentially ACL. 5-0. Will we see Paul back in the WWE ring?
I don't know if we'll see him back in the WWE ring. And the reason I feel that we might not see him again is because one thing about WWE, it's all entertainment. It's all about, you know, telling a story. And he did a really good job of that. He actually did a lot better than I thought he would do in that match. Like, if you watch the match, it was a phenomenal match. Probably one of the best WWE matches I've watched in a very long time. And
I was busy listening to the Drake and 21 Savage record, so I didn't get to see
it. So I watched more highlights than actually the whole match. But it's just, he was jumping all over the place. He was doing flips. You know, he landed on a table. He was very entertaining. So I can definitely see why people would love to see him in the WWE again. But it's also, I don't know how much money he's making from the WWE. So if you're out here getting hurt, tearing ACLs, MCLs, it kind of is questionable. It's like, hey, do I want to jump back into that ring, or do I could continue to make good money and not be in the ring, but it will also make for a great story to come back and be back out there in the fight again. So, Logan Paul, he's one of those guys, I can see him going back out there, but when you start to think of like long term, me personally, I'll see him again.
Also kind of offsets your point about it being all entertainment if he has an actual MCL and ACL and all of those injuries there. Either way, great times today, 5-0. You know what? You turned me around on these Houston Astros. I thought it would go the other way, but I tip my hat to you and to Ben Verlander and all the Astros fans. Either way, that's it for this episode of Don't Call It a Comeback. By the way, some of you may have noticed a giant billboard in Times Square promoting this very show just a couple of weeks ago. We may make a comeback and appear there once again, 5-0. So if you snap a picture of it and tweet it to me or Shazier, we'll be sure to shout you out on the next show.
Yeah, make sure to check it out because we're not everywhere at all times. So we definitely want to see it. Tweet us and we'll make sure to shout you out. But make sure to follow, rate, review the show. And wherever you're listening to it at, check us out on YouTube at the Wondery channel. And make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. But we'll see you all next week.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Can't call it a comeback. Everybody to your feet, make arenas rise. Yeah, I'm saying from the left to right, we get it on tonight. We do it all, but we don't back down. Just give me one shot, one chance, I'ma take it. Fixing up the game, but these records I keep on breaking.